Hello, this is Dr. Praveen Ramachandra. I'm senior endocrinologist working in DiaPlus Endocrinology Clinic, Yelahanka, Bangalore, India. Please watch this video.
Welcome to the architecture of slimness. In this deep dive, we're unraveling a really fascinating mystery that's essentially been hiding right in plain sight. We're going to look at how sweeping, almost completely invisible changes to our daily environment over the last 60 years have drastically altered our bodies, literally without us even noticing it was happening. I mean, think about it for a second. How exactly did people in the 1960s stay so thin? They weren't logging hours on a Peloton, they weren't obsessively tracking their macros, and they definitely weren't chugging protein shakes. And yet they naturally maintained this distinctly slender silhouette. So, what were they doing differently? Well, the answer turns out to be kind of everything. To really grasp the scale of this shift, just consider this one striking statistic. Today, the average American woman weighs around 166 pounds, but back in the early 60s, that average was closer to 140 pounds. In fact, 166 pounds is almost exactly what the average American man weighed back in 1962. That is a massive population-level shift in just a few short generations. It's wild! So, to figure out why this happened, we actually need to start by looking right inside your kitchen cabinets. Take a look at this little trick of the mind. In the 1960s, your standard dinner plate was about 9 inches across, which holds roughly 800 calories when it's full. Today, our modern plates have ballooned to 12 inches. And because of this psychological trick called the Dilbeau illusion, an identical portion of food looks super generous on that vintage 9-inch plate, but put that exact same food on a 12-inch plate, and it looks like a measly little appetizer. So what do we naturally do? We fill it up. Jumping to that 12-inch plate secretly more than doubled our potential meal capacity to 1,900 calories. Your eyes basically trick your brain into thinking you need more, and you serve yourself more, completely by accident.
But this invisible shift wasn't just happening at the dinner table. It was happening across the entire home. Back in 1965, the average American woman spent nearly 26 hours every single week doing heavy, manual housework. Today, thanks to lightweight vacuums, robotic floor sweepers, and automatic dishwashers, that number has plummeted to just over 13 hours of automated convenience.
Stop and really consider what that 1960s labor actually meant in practice. Scrubbing floors on your hands and knees, beating heavy rugs with a wooden paddle, hauling wet sheets to a clothesline, ironing them. Researchers calculated that all of this burned roughly 850 calories a day. To put that into perspective, that is the exact metabolic equivalent of running 5 miles every single day, without ever even lacing up a pair of sneakers or calling it a workout. It was literally just a Tuesday.
And this brings us to a really crucial concept, NEAT, which stands for Non-Exercise Activity Thermogenesis. As you picture these everyday actions, realize that NEAT was historically just massive. It's basically the cumulative calorie burn from thousands of tiny little physical efforts. Think about walking to the corner store, getting up to answer a heavy wall-mounted phone, manually cranking down a car window, or even just walking across the living room to turn the TV dial, because, well, remote controls weren't really a thing yet. Each effort was tiny, sure, but they multiply it across every hour of every day, adding hundreds of invisible calories to the daily burn.
And hey, this wasn't just a stay-at-home phenomenon. Compare the 1960s workplace to today's environment. Back then, nearly half of all jobs required heavy physical exertion. We're talking steel mills, active farms, manufacturing lines. And even white-collar workers had to regularly walk memos down the hall or physically wrestle with heavy, jammed filing cabinets. Today, a staggering 87% of the workforce sits mostly motionless in front of glowing monitors. We sit roughly 50% more than we did in 1965. And because of this, our occupation-related energy expenditure has dropped by over 100 calories a day.
But wait, the sheer effort of daily life didn't stop at chores or work. Just think about a typical 1960s grocery run. The store had what, maybe 4 aisles? It required you to buy raw ingredients, whole chickens, unwashed heads of lettuce, raw flour. Preparing a meal meant a full hour of chopping, roasting, and mixing. This sheer labor of cooking naturally limited our portions. I mean, nobody was going to spend another 45 minutes making a second batch of mashed potatoes just because the first one tasted good, right? The physical effort itself was a built-in form of natural portion control.
Okay, so during this exact same period, our food supply was undergoing a quiet revolution of its own. Just look at the timeline we have here. In the 1970s, global sugar prices spiked, and suddenly, cheap, high-fructose corn syrup was aggressively pumped into literally everything, from bread to yogurt. Around that same time, shifting dietary guidelines pushed Americans to swap out butter for industrial cooking oils. The result? By 2010, the calories we got from cooking oils alone had exploded to over 400 a day. When you add it all up, the modern food supply quietly embedded an extra 500 calories into an ordinary day compared to 1970. Now, looking at all this, it is incredibly tempting to just idealize the past, right? But we really have to step back and ask a hard question. Was the low body weight of this era truly a golden age of wellness? Or is there a darker global reality to this story? Let's step outside of America for a moment to see how this looked on a global scale. When we examine peer-reviewed data from the National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau in 1970s India, a very different, pretty sobering story emerges. While photos from this era definitely show very slim populations, these incredibly low body mass indexes, like a mean BMI of barely 18.4 for rural men, were actually signs of widespread chronic energy deficiency. This wasn't some sort of health ideal to strive for. It was a devastating public health crisis. The staggering reality here is that nearly 60% of rural Indian men suffered from severe undernutrition in the late 70s, and this was driven entirely by food insecurity, poverty, and intensely demanding agrarian labor. We're talking about a grueling lifestyle where, say, a grandfather might walk 5 kilometers each way in the blistering heat just to reach the local courthouse, all while surviving on a diet made up mostly of grains with barely any fat or sugar. It was poverty-induced thinness, not wellness. Fast forward to today, and we can see exactly how rapidly a shifting environment changes our bodies. As India's economy grew, the lifestyle shifted abruptly from active agrarian labor to sedentary urban jobs, and that was combined with a massive influx of ultra-processed foods. Average daily calorie intake surged from around 2,000 to nearly 2,500. And the consequence? Obesity rates in India rocketed from under 2% in the 1970s to around 25% today. That is a massive jump, creating a modern crisis of metabolically obese individuals who might actually still look relatively slim on the outside, but are carrying dangerously high levels of visceral fat. All right, bringing our focus back to the United States, we need to talk about the era's dark secrets here at home. We really have to peel back that shiny 1960s nostalgia to uncover the uncomfortable, frankly unglamorous realities that helped maintain that elegant silhouette. Because spoiler alert, it wasn't all just small plates and doing the laundry.
The harsh truths of the era paint a totally different picture. In 1965, nearly 42% of American adults smoked constantly. And nicotine, as we know, is a really potent appetite suppressant that artificially raises your resting metabolic rate. On top of that, doctors were casually prescribing amphetamine-based diet pills to housewives just to suppress their appetites and speed up their hearts. Culturally, the pressure to stay thin was absolutely relentless. It was fueled by body shaming and downright cruel beauty standards that were openly tolerated in ways we would absolutely rightfully condemn today.
This 1968 advertisement brilliantly illustrates the culture of the time. Notice how the marketing explicitly ties cigarette smoking directly to feminine independence and sustaining a slender figure. Women openly smoked instead of snacking, and the marketing machine capitalized entirely on that appetite-suppressing side effect. They knew exactly what they were doing.
And the data proves exactly how powerfully that widespread nicotine habit was keeping weight down. When Americans finally, and rightfully, started putting down the cigarettes in massive numbers during the 70s and 80s to, save their lungs and hearts, the demographic scale almost immediately went up. Former smokers gained an average of 5 to 10 pounds in the year after quitting. Across a population of millions, making that incredibly positive health choice created a very visible demographic weight gain. It's an honest piece of the puzzle that absolutely has to be included in this conversation.
So where does this all leave us today as we try to learn from the past? Look, we definitely do not want to return to chain smoking, popping amphetamine diet pills, cruel body shaming, or the chronic undernutrition we saw historically in agrarian economies. No, thank you. We want to keep our modern conveniences and our higher health standards. But we also have to recognize that there's an invisible architecture from the past, the good parts, that we can consciously rescue to drastically improve our health today. Here are the actionable steps we should absolutely be keeping. First up, smaller plates. Ditch the massive 12-inch platters and go back to 9-inch ones. It naturally limits your portions without you needing even an ounce of willpower. Second, reinstate scheduled meals. Back in the day, after dinner, the kitchen was closed. This created a natural fasting window with no grazing or midnight snacks. Third, prioritize whole foods. Buy and cook whole ingredients, and let the sheer effort of preparation naturally pace your eating habits. And finally, maximize your incidental daily movement. Walk when you can, stand up to change things around, and actively inject physical engagement back into your day wherever possible.
Understanding exactly how our environment secretly shapes our bodies
is honestly incredibly empowering. It means you aren't just relying on sheer brute force willpower, you can actually engineer your surroundings to work for you. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. Look around your home, your office, your kitchen. What invisible systems in your modern daily routine could you systematically rebuild today to bring back the natural architecture of slimness?